Hi, my name is Lizette De Paz, and in this video I'm going to go through my essay for Dr. Campbell's class. For my introduction, the following will present opposing perspective as to why the imperialistic ideologies were imposed on the Philippines near the turn of the 20th century. The United States just had won a war with Spain, taking over some islands in the Pacific Ocean, as well as purchasing the Philippines from Spain in 1898. After the purchase of the Philippines, the U.S. was clearly met with resistance, as many people in the Philippines did not want to move from Spanish leadership to American leadership. The authors in support of U.S. imperialism in the Philippines clearly point out some of the clear advantages of imperialism, while three other authors question humanity and action that appears to go against the values that the United States was founded on as a new nation. The position of the authors in support of U.S. imperialism in the Philippines will initially be analyzed. In the Truman Commission report, the author argues that the U.S. should continue to rule the Philippines as they believe Filipinos are incapable of having a self-government. So the first quote I chose is, "The Filipinos are not a nation, but a variegated assemblage of different tribes and people, and their loyalty is still of the tribe type." I chose this quote because it represents the Commission's whole logic, as they are portraying Filipinos as incapable of having a stable government. So this shows how Truman supports imperialism, using claims about the Filipinos' political instability and believe that they need to step up to guide them so they can be successful. For my second quote I chose, it states, "The intellect public opinion on which popular government rests does not exist in the Philippines, and it cannot exist until education has elevated their masses, broadened their intellectual horizons, and disciplined their faculty of judgment." So I chose this quote because it shows how the Commission supported its argument by framing Filipinos as too uneducated for democracy, which justified continued U.S. control. So the third quote I chose says, "Should our power by any fatality be withdrawn, the Commission believed that the government of the Philippines would speedily lapse into anarchy, which would excuse if it did not necessitate the intervention of other powers and the eventual division of the island among them." So this quote reveals the fear-based argument without the U.S. rule. They believe chaos is going to occur if they don't step up and guide them, and they are using this as an excuse to be able to rule them so they can seem as a good nation that is there to help them. So the last quote I have is, "The supremacy of the United States must and will be enforced." This line is essential because it reveals the true motive behind their argument. The U.S. authority wasn't an option, but something they believed must be established for the good of the people in the islands for everyone in the Philippines. Henry Cabot Lodge's argument is that the U.S. expansion was historically necessary to strengthen the U.S. My first quote is, "The neutrality policy and the Monroe Doctrine are the two great principles established at the outset by far-seeing statesmen in regard to the foreign relationship of the United States. But it would be a fatal mistake to suppose that our foreign policy stops there." I chose this quote because it shows Lodge is reinterpreting the American founding principles to endorse imperialism. So instead of seeing the Monroe's Doctrine as a limit, he's claiming that it enables U.S. global expansion. He's supporting his argument as he used American history itself as evidence that expansion was natural and justified. I chose small quotes. Some things that I highlighted were, "Small states are of the past and have no future. It is a movement which makes for civilization and the advancement of race." This demonstrates his social Darwinist mindset that strong nations survive and expand while weak ones fade, and proves why the U.S. invaded the Philippines. Imperialists demanded expansion because they believed the U.S. would fall behind stronger nations. For Albert J. Beveridge, he argues that ruling the Philippines was Americans' divine mission from God. So the first quote I have is, "They are not capable of self-government. How could they be? They are not a self-governing race. They are Orientals, Malays instructed by Spaniards in the latter's worst estate." I also highlighted Oriental's children and self-governing race. I chose this because it exposes his open racism and his belief that the Americans are superior, which was central to his argument. It shows how he supported imperialism by demeaning Filipinos as biologically inferior. Second quote I chose is, "The Declaration of Independence does not forbid us to do our part in the regeneration of the world." This is essential because it shows how Beveridge attempts to twist the American founding ideals into justification for empire. This illustrates how imperialists reinterpret national values to fit expansion goals. My third quote I have is, "God has marked the American people as his chosen nation to finally lead the regeneration of the world." And I also highlighted savage and senile people, as he is stating that the people who aren't in America are savage and senile people, because he believes that God chose the American people to regenerate the world. So this reveals the religious ideology that frame imperialism as a sacred duty. Another form of evidence Beveridge used to justify rule over the Philippines. Charles G. Ames is on the imperialistic side. He argues that conquering the Philippines betrayed both the U.S. democratic principles and the Christian values. The first quote I chose is, "Poor Christian as I am, it grieves and shames me to see the generation instructed by Prince of Peace proposing to set him on a due stool and to crown him with a fool's cap, while shouting hosannas to the great god Jingo, who seems on both sides of the water to be the modern representative of both Mars and Miochi." This matters because it shows moral and religious reasoning behind opposition to imperialism. The second quote I chose is, "The policy of imperialism threatens to change the temper of our peoples and put us into permanent attitude for ignorance, testes, and defiance towards other nations." I chose this quote because it reveals his fear that imperialism would corrupt Americans' democracy itself, showing how he supported his argument through warnings about the long-term national consequences that would occur. William Jennings Bryan argued that imperialism violated American founding principles and states that imperialism harmed ordinary Americans. The first quote I chose is, "It is not necessary to own people in order to trade with them." This quote is essential because it directly challenges the economic justification for imperialism. Bryan's argument shows that trade does not require domination. The second quote I chose is, "If true Christianity consists of carrying out in our daily lives the teaching of Christ, who would say that we are commanded to civilize with dynamite and proselyte with the sword?" I included this quote because it exposes the contradiction between Christianity teachings and violent imperialism, supporting Bryan's moral reason against expansion. Benjamin O. Flower exposes brutality and hypocrisy. He argued that the U.S. rule in the Philippines was not benevolent, but brutal. His most powerful evidence was from military report from Major Cornelius Gardiner's report, as he admitted to torturing people in the Philippines by water curing. Often every house in the barrio is burned, calling them racial slurs, and shooting every living thing in sight, man, woman, or child. I selected these short quotes, because it destroys the imperialistic claims that the U.S. was acting morally or humanely. It reveals the violent reality of occupation. This also shows the U.S. policy contradicted both American and Christian values, reinforcing an anti-imperialistic arguments.